Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the last episode of this series. It's also the episode that this series has been preparing for since episode 1. Across the previous 14 episodes, we walked step by step. From the geometry of vowels, to the signature of civilization. From the philosophical axes of the three original level civilizations, to their three postures toward nature. From the 2,500-year methodological DNA of analytical method, to how holistic thinking has been preserved in other civilizations. From Chen-Ning's gauge field theory as the modern mathematical expression of relational thinking, to string theory as the last struggle of the atomist tradition. From precise definition hitting the wall on 5 battlefields, to the holistic intuition of super-individuals, to the upward migration of the cognitive frontier in the age of AI. Every episode has been pointing toward the same place. And that place, today, we finally arrive at it head-on. The question I want to ask is this: in the history of human thought, is it possible to construct such a theory? Its foundation is the absolute whole, not starting from many and connecting them, but starting from one and letting many emerge as internal differentiation of the one. And at the same time it must be precise, describable in modern mathematics, capable of verifiable predictions, and publicly testable by the scientific community. If it exists, what does it look like? Where does it begin? What would it change? And our generation, are we the first in history with the conditions to attempt this? This is what today's episode is about. First, let's clarify the current state. Why do all the holistic theories in modern physics still fall short of absolute holism? Let me examine the most holistic existing physical theories one by one. They all approach absolute wholeness, but none have reached it. Quantum mechanics, the wave function is holistic. But it is a wave function about particles. Particles remain the foundational concept. Quantum field theory, fields are continuous. But there are many fields: electron field, photon field, quark field, still plural, not one. Gauge field theory is extraordinarily elegant. But its symmetry group is plural: SU, 3, times SU, 2, times U, 1, 3 separate symmetries standing apart. String theory, strings are the basic unit, multiple strings, plus an 11-dimensional manifold topology. Still, multiple things. Loop quantum gravity, spin networks consist of nodes and edges. Still multiple fundamental elements present. Quantum mechanics. The wave function is holistic. But it is the wave function of particles. Particles are still the basic concept. Quantum field theory. The field is continuous. But there are many fields: the electron field, the photon field, the quark field, an inventory of fields. Still a discrete, plural structure. The holographic principle, boundary and bulk, is still a duality of two things. Do you see it? Still beginning from multiplicity. All the wholeness of these theories begins from the many, relating the many to one another, assembling a picture that merely looks whole. But not one theory begins from the absolute one, letting the many emerge as the internal differentiation, the internal expression, the internal projection of the one. This is the critical difference. Let me make the starting point of absolute holism clear. It does not say everything in the universe adds up to a whole. That sum still begins from the many, it merely packages the many into one. Absolute holism says something far more radical: the one precedes the many. The one is not the result of combining the many, the one is the source from which the many arises. The many is not the foundation. The many is the internal differentiation, the self-unfolding, the local expression of the one. This is a fundamental ontological inversion. Throughout history, multiple independent intellectual traditions have touched upon this starting point, in ancient metaphysical systems, in early holistic cosmologies, in the subtle expressions of monotheism. Spinoza's substance monism, certain late thoughts of Leibniz, Schelling's philosophy of identity, Whitehead's process philosophy, all approached this starting point. But all of these approaches stopped at the stage of description in natural language. Not one was made precise, mathematical, or empirically testable. For natural language itself, as Wittgenstein demonstrated, is inherently vague. Using a vague instrument to describe what is already difficult to pin down results in double vagueness. This is the task before us today, to advance the starting point of absolute holism from the description of natural language into precise mathematical expression. This must happen. And yet it has not happened. An absolute holism that is precise, expressible in modern mathematics, capable of producing verifiable predictions, that position remains empty. One might ask, why must we begin from the one? Let me make the depth of this question clear. If you begin from the many, you will encounter a series of fundamental problems that cannot be resolved. The first problem, the hard problem of consciousness. If the universe at its most fundamental level consists of multiple independent entities, where does subjective experience come from? Why is there a subject that sees? The whole cannot be derived from multiple independent parts. This is the paradox of emergence. If the universe at its most fundamental level is one whole, subjectivity is simply the local expression of that whole's self-awareness, and the problem dissolves naturally. The second problem, quantum non-locality. Why can two particles separated by vast distances instantaneously respond to each other? If they are two independent entities, this is impossible. But if they are essentially two expressions of the same whole, this becomes entirely natural. The third problem, the nature of spacetime. The deepest physics is telling us, spacetime is not foundational. Spacetime is emergent. If even spacetime is emergent, then, independently existing many cannot hold at the deepest level. The very concept of many requires time and space to distinguish things. Without spacetime, there are no two things. This is a profound physical logic, and the very foundation of ontology. The fourth problem, the position of the observer. All the difficulties of 20th century physics arise from one fact: the observer cannot be cleanly separated from the observed. If you start from the many, the observer can only be appended as another independent entity, and this is always forced, always awkward. But if you start from the one, the observer is simply the self-referential local expression of the whole, natural, needing no forced appendage. The fifth problem, the origin of the universe. If you start from the many, you must explain where these independent entities came from, and every explanation falls into infinite regress. But if you start from the one, the many is the internal differentiation of the one, the problem dissolves, no regress needed. All these fundamental problems point in the same direction. Human thought needs an ontology that begins from the absolute one. This is a critical difference. This is the fundamental reason absolute holism has not yet been precisely expressed. Let me make the starting point of absolute holism clear. It is not saying everything in the universe added together makes a whole. The added up whole still begins from the many, it just packages the many into one. This is not yet the absolute one we seek. First principle, uniqueness. There is one and only one fundamental reality. This is the starting point, and the foundation of everything. We may call it the primordial whole, or the absolute field, not a field in the quantum field theory sense, but the meta-level, singular, self-contained whole. It has no parts. Its parts are patterns of internal differentiation, not independently existing entities, like waves on water. A wave is not a part of water, but a mode of water. But it goes deeper still. Even the very distinction between water and wave itself arises from differentiation within a more primordial, undivided one. What absolute holism says is something more radical: the one precedes the many. The one is not the result of the many combining, the one is the source from which the many arises. The many is not foundational, the many is the internal differentiation, self-unfolding, and local expression of the one. All of the many emerges from the one, yet none is truly independent, each remains an internal expression of the one, forever inseparable from the whole. This is a fundamental ontological reversal. The question, what is it, already presupposes a defined object, and must be abandoned as the foundational inquiry. The fundamental questions must be, how does it differentiate, how does it unfold, how does it express itself? Existence is not static, existence is process. Historically, every tradition that touched this starting point stopped at natural language description. The observer is not added after the fact, the observer is the self-referential differentiation of the absolute whole. The universe observes itself, and through this self-observation, subjectivity arises. In certain local regions, life, consciousness, luminous focal points of self-awareness emerge within the whole. Consciousness is not some accidental byproduct of the universe, consciousness is the very manner in which the universe becomes aware of itself. But this profound insight demands precise mathematical expression. Any successful absolute holism must be able to reduce to existing physics, quantum mechanics, general relativity, gauge field theory, as valid approximations under special limiting conditions. Just as Einstein's relativity must reduce to Newtonian mechanics at low velocities, this is the critical condition that transforms a theory from pure speculation into genuine science. Because natural language itself, as Wittgenstein proved, is fuzzy. Using fuzzy tools to describe a whole already hard to precisify yields double fuzziness. A theory must predict new phenomena and be experimentally testable, or it is merely another version of metaphysics. And this is precisely the task we face today. The difficulty must be honestly acknowledged, it is immense. It demands several breakthroughs that do not yet exist. First, new mathematics is required. All existing mathematics begins with elements, sets, and relations, which already presupposes multiplicity. A genuine holist mathematics may need to be rebuilt from the very ground up. Second, new logic is required. Existing logical frameworks equally presuppose multiplicity. A wholly new system of reasoning is needed, one capable of genuinely describing the one prior to all differentiation. Classical logic begins from A is not non-A, but absolute holism requires a precise formulation in which A is simultaneously A and non-A. To advance the starting point of absolute holism from natural language description to precise mathematical expression, this must happen. But to this day, it has not happened. Third, new cognitive tools. A researcher of this theory must simultaneously possess the most rigorous mathematical training and an intuitive capacity to grasp the whole directly. Such people are extraordinarily rare. But history has known those who tried. Let me name a few who walked this path. David Bohm, one of the most profound physicists of the 20th century. In the 1980s, he proposed the theory of the implicate order, an attempt to describe the deepest layer of reality beneath all visible phenomena. The world we perceive is the explicate order, discrete objects, distinct events, clear and traceable chains of cause and effect. But beneath the explicate order lies the implicate order, where all things enfold into one another, interpenetrating without separation. Every local part contains the whole within it. The whole is not the sum of its parts, the whole is undivided, prior to the parts, unfolded into apparent multiplicity. Bohm developed a new language called the Rhea-mode, based on verbs rather than nouns, because noun-based language had already embedded the logic of the many into the very structure of our thinking. His attempt was left unfinished. But his direction was right. Roger Penrose proposed twistor theory, an attempt to treat points in spacetime not as fundamental, but as derivatives of a more primary twistor space. The point is not foundational, the point is derived from relation. This is a mathematical turn from analytic geometry toward a fully relational geometry. Stephen Wolfram proposed that the universe is a self-rewriting hypergraph, at the most fundamental level, not particles, not fields, but a continuously updating network of pure relations. Spacetime, matter, and energy all emerge from this ever-updating network of relations. This too is an attempt aimed at absolute holism. Carlo Rovelli proposed relational quantum mechanics. Physical properties have no absolute existence, only relational existence defined through interaction. He also excavates the forgotten holistic lineage of the pre-Socratics, seeking to reconnect with an ancient current of thought that history buried and left unfinished. Alfred North Whitehead, British mathematician and philosopher of the early 20th century, also walked this path toward a mathematics of the whole. Whitehead argued in Process and Reality that reality is not composed of things, but of events. Every event prehends all other events. The entire universe is mutually contained and interpenetrating at every instant. This stands as one of the closest attempts within Western philosophy to absolute holism, seeking to fundamentally break free from the cage of subject-object dualism. These are all attempts, and none fully succeeded, yet they are all moving in the same direction. And what strikes me most profoundly is this: throughout all of history, the complete conditions for this have never existed simultaneously. To achieve the formalization of absolute holism, 5 resources must be simultaneously present, not one can be absent. First, the cognitive posture toward wholeness, an intuitive capacity to directly grasp the indivisible totality, scattered at the margins of traditions for 2,500 years, never systematized. Second, precise mathematical tools, category theory, topology, formal reasoning, only reaching sufficient maturity in the latter half of the 20th century. Third, the experimental constraints of modern physics, quantum mechanics, relativity, gauge field theory, the core achievements of 20th century physics. Fourth, introspective data from consciousness research. The observer must be built into the theory itself, a fruit of 20th century cognitive science and phenomenology. Fifth, eye-assisted mathematical exploration. The human brain alone cannot construct such a system. This resource only became available in the 21st century. In all of history, no era has ever simultaneously possessed all 5 of these resources. And now, for the very first time, they are all in place at once. Our generation may be the first in all of history to possess the complete set of tools needed to attempt this. This does not mean our generation will complete it. It may take many generations. But ours is the first with the conditions to begin the attempt. This is a weighty responsibility. And it is also an extraordinary opportunity. The person most capable of completing this synthesis must simultaneously possess all 5 resources. This is the most critical insight of all. But such a person has never existed in history. These resources are distributed across different disciplines and traditions, and one person could master at most 2 or 3 of them. But, entering the 21st century, everything began to quietly change. The internet has opened global resources to everyone. AI now allows anyone to rapidly enter any field. Cross-disciplinary, cross-traditional work has become genuinely possible for the first time in history. The most promising person to do this work need not come from the greatest scientific centers, not MIT, not Cambridge. Someone who can freely traverse multiple intellectual traditions, rigorously trained in mathematics and physics, yet unbound by any single academic school. Willing to dedicate an entire lifetime to this seemingly impossible work. Such people are exceedingly rare. But every generation may produce 1 or 2 such people. Our generation may be precisely at the moment when they can truly begin their work. Let me close this series with one sentence: human thought now stands at a position it has never occupied in 2,500 years. Analytical methods have reached their peak, their achievements brilliant, their limits clear. Holistic thinking has held its ground for 2,500 years, its insights deep, its costs real. All the major advances of the 20th century, physics, mathematics, the rise of AI, the introspective turn in consciousness science, all point in the same direction. Human thought needs an ontology that begins from the absolute one, grounded in absolute wholeness, expressed in precise mathematics, tested by repeatable experiment. And to date, no such theory has been precisely established. But it must be built. This is the real task we face today, to make precise, mathematize, and render testable a starting point of absolute wholeness. Our generation is the first in all of history to possess the complete set of tools required to attempt this work. From episode 1 to 15, vowel geometry, civilization geometry, the hidden wholeness thread in gauge field theory, all of it preparation for this unfinished, greatest task. I now want to sketch what features such a future theory should have. All prior work has been preparation for this moment. In the next phase, this channel will no longer explain others' theories. I will begin constructing my own ontology. Let us tentatively call it the primordial whole or the absolute field, not the field in the sense of quantum field theory, but in the meta sense, a unique, self-containing whole. It has no parts. Its apparent parts are its own internal modes of differentiation, not independently existing entities. This is like waves on the surface of water. The wave is not a part of the water, it is a mode of the water. But even the very distinction between water and wave must itself be differentiated from something even deeper. Particles are local modes of differentiation. Forces are relations among modes of differentiation. Spacetime is the unfolding structure of differentiation. The observer is a self-referential differentiation. Second principle, self-differentiation as the source of multiplicity. The many is not pre-existing. The many is the self-differentiation of the one. I have no certainty I can complete this. I don't even know where this work will lead. But all the arguments from the previous 15 episodes have convinced me, this direction is right. This moment is right. This work must be done by someone. If not me, then someone else. If not this generation, then the next. But since this must happen, I am willing to try. Starting next episode, we enter this new work. I'll begin with the most fundamental question: what is primordial space? How does it differ from the space we experience daily? How does it differentiate into particles? Into time? Into consciousness? At every step, I will do my utmost. Third principle, process as foundation. You must use how it differentiates, how it unfolds, how it self-expresses, as the basic acts. Being is not static, being is process. At every step, I will welcome your criticism, questioning, and pushback. This is not a completed system. This is an ongoing attempt. If you are willing to walk this path with me, subscribe to this channel. Together, let us begin something impossible. See you next episode.